So let's get right into it. Think about this. China has spent trillions of dollars on its Belt and Road Initiative. We're talking huge projects, ports, railways, pipelines, often in some of the most dangerous places in the world. But there's a massive, and I mean massive, paradox at the center of it all. You see, China's official army, the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, well, they pretty much stay home. They haven't fought a major war abroad since 1979. So what happens when things go sideways? When a Chinese-owned mine in Africa gets attacked, or a pipeline in Central Asia is threatened? Who do they call? Who are the ghost soldiers protecting this sprawling economic empire? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Mercenaries, right? Guys like Russia's Wagner Group, kitted out for frontline combat. Well, you've got to throw that image out the window. That is not what we're talking about here. China's guys, they're a totally different animal. They operate in the shadows, part of a stealth industry that's all about projecting power in a much quieter and maybe even smarter way. And this is where we get to the core of the whole thing, what I call the gun paradox. Just imagine this problem. How in the world do you protect billions of dollars in assets and thousands of your own people when the guys you send to do the protecting aren't even legally allowed to carry guns? Okay, first, a quick but really important distinction. We're talking about PSEs, private security companies. Their job is strictly defensive. Think guards on a compound, guys protecting engineers on a construction site. This is worlds away from PMCs, private military companies, like the old Blackwater or Wagner. Those guys are basically soldiers for hire. China said no way to PMCs, but they gave a green light to these defensive PSEs back in 2009. And here it is, the absolute heart of the paradox. Chinese law is crystal clear and super strict on this. These PSCs are forbidden from carrying guns outside of China. So you've got thousands of Chinese security pros in some of the sketchiest places on Earth, and they're unarmed. It sounds insane, right? How could that possibly work? Well, they came up with a pretty ingenious workaround. Think of it this way. Instead of being the muscle, the Chinese PSCs are the brain of the operation. They don't carry the guns, they hire local armed police or militias to do that. The Chinese team just provides the command, the control, the intelligence. They're like the directors on a film set, telling everyone where to go and what to do, without ever being in the shop themselves. And if things get really bad, yeah, they have plans to borrow guns from those local partners. It's all about a light footprint and, you guessed it, plausible deniability. But let's be very clear here. These are not your average private security firms. Almost every single one of their employees is a veteran, either from the People's Liberation Army or the People's Armed Police. This creates what one expert calls a blurry line between what's private and what's state-run. And that's the whole point. They're basically a shadow army, a tool for the Chinese Communist Party to project power and protect its interests without the headlines and the political drama of actually sending in the troops. So this whole command and control thing sounds good on paper, but does it actually work when bullets start flying? Well, in 2016, this model faced the ultimate test by fire, right in the middle of a civil war in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. The city just exploded into chaos, and caught right in the middle of it were 330 Chinese oil workers. They weren't in one spot, they were scattered all over the city, in 10 different locations, completely trapped as the war raged around them. The guy in charge, Kong Wei, a veteran of the PLA and head of a Chinese PSC called Duduwei Security, said it was just a nightmare. He said bullets and shells flew over our compound all day and night. They were running on fumes, no sleep for over 2 days, and they quickly realized the walls of their building wouldn't even stop a bullet. They were completely exposed. And this is where we see that model kick into high gear. Duwei's Chinese team, unarmed, remember, they became the nerve center. They directed their armed local partners, they got the civilians into shipping containers to protect them from shrapnel, and for 4 days they held the line. As soon as the airport reopened, they got every single one of those 330 workers out. It was an incredible success. And get this, it happened while the official UN peacekeepers were basically hunkered down, stuck in their bases. It proved the whole concept could work. But here's the thing, a model that works in the chaos of a civil war might not work against a different kind of threat. And that's exactly what's happening right now. In Pakistan, that unarmed workaround isn't just being tested, it's starting to fail. You've got groups like the Baloch Liberation Army who are deliberately and systematically hunting Chinese engineers and workers. These aren't random acts of violence. They're targeted attacks on China's massive investment there, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. And the attacks are getting worse, more frequent and more deadly. For Beijing, the situation is becoming impossible. And this leads to a major international standoff. Beijing is basically telling Pakistan, the old rules aren't working. You need to let our security guys carry their own guns on your territory. And for Pakistan, that's a total nightmare. It's one thing to have partners. It's another to have an armed foreign force operating on your soil that you can't control. It's a direct challenge to their sovereignty. And the stakes here are just astronomical. We're talking about $63 billion. CPEC isn't just some project. It's the crown jewel of the entire Belt and Road Initiative. These attacks are putting the whole thing at risk, and it's forcing China to rethink its entire global security playbook. So as China is trying to figure this out, trying to build a stronger armed private force, we get to the most unbelievable, ironic twist in this whole story. Because it turns out the person who helped them get started is someone you would never, ever expect. You're not going to believe this. The guy who literally wrote the book on modern American mercenaries, the founder of Blackwater, helped build China's security industry. Yeah, I'm talking about Eric Prince. After Blackwater, he started a company called Frontier Services Group, FSG. And guess who its biggest shareholder is? A massive Chinese state-owned investment company called CITC Group. Prince's company helped set up a security training school right in China. They even signed a deal to build a training base in Shenzhen. So let that sink in. The architect of America's private army was essentially teaching his methods to what is now a key instrument of Chinese power. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. You've got this unique, unarmed security model that worked until it didn't. You've got this completely bizarre connection to Eric Prince and Blackwater, and now you have this massive pressure to arm these forces. This is way bigger than just a few security guards. What we're watching is the evolution of a whole new way to project power on the global stage. And this really breaks it down perfectly. You look at Russia's Wagner Group, and it's all about offense, combat, propping up regimes, and making money from chaos. Chinese PSCs have been the exact opposite: defensive, protecting assets, trying to create stability for their investments. The mission, the weapons, the entire goal has been fundamentally different. Well, at least it was. And that brings us to the big, final question. This crisis in Pakistan is forcing their hand. So as these Chinese security forces, private in name but state-linked in reality, start carrying their own weapons in other countries, is this just about protecting engineers on a worksite, or are we actually watching the birth of something new? The moment China's ghost army steps out of the shadows and becomes a real, tangible force in global power politics.